Number 10, Ebola is the new AIDS. And to speak for the motion, I invite Dean, the Prime Minister, for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, Ebola is the new AIDS. Now, there are 3 particular points I'd like to talk about. Firstly, fear versus knowledge. Secondly, cultural and societal values helping the spread of the disease, and media versus the experts. So, AIDS came about in the public eye in the 1980s. It was apparently from Africa, from the jungle, from monkeys. We weren't sure where it was from. There was this crazy story. Then it was only homosexuals who had it. And suddenly you could get it from toilet seats and kissing someone and hugging someone or drinking glasses or all these different ways. And people were not wanting to go out, not wanting to touch each other, not wanting to do anything for a span of 3, 4, 5, 6 years for fear that they were going to get AIDS, get HIV. And Ebola has become the same sort of thing in today's media crazy world. 24/7 we have information. And with the big Fox News special, you've got misinformation as much as you have information. And you've got people like Obama and the World Health Organization and the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta trying to say, calm down, people. This is not the craziness that you think it is. There is a particular vector of transmission, and there are certain things that must be done to get the disease and the like. So knowledge overcame that with AIDS throughout the 80s and the 90s. Now it's slowly becoming that way as well. Societal and cultural values in Africa, the fact that people were getting the disease from burying their dead, from celebrating at funerals and the like, going to hospitals, being medical practitioners. Same thing with AIDS, specific in the sense that there were specific methods of transmission that you had to use. We'll address the third point in the final minutes.
Thanks, Dean. Okay. To speak against the motion, we have Rob for 3 minutes.
Thank you. So the motion is Ebola is the new AIDS. And I would, first of all, I'd love to rebut the Prime Minister's 3 points, but frankly, we didn't hear most of it. When we get to the first bit, fear versus knowledge, are we really saying that misinformation means equivalence? So all the things we don't know about are wrapped up in one bucket, and because we are partially ignorant, that says they're the same thing. We can't trivialize this argument, but really both of these diseases are terrible, life-threatening things that are affecting the lives of many people around the world still today, and one is in a very different state than the other. So I think for Ebola to be the new AIDS, there has to be a similarity. And the dissimilarities are so great that I don't think we can see them in the same camp. First of all, when we look at AIDS, AIDS was transmitted as HIV with an incredibly long induction period before that could become full-blown AIDS. It took a long time. And therefore, many people unknowingly could distribute the HIV virus without any knowledge. And even once it became understood that that was the vector, it was still a huge job to bring that under control because so many people all over the world had been infected. So, very long incubation period followed by a very slow descent into the later stages of the disease. Enough that we could actually find ways of dealing with the condition before it actually became fatal in many cases. Next thing, when we talk about the method of transmission, yes, there was panic around AIDS, and rightly so, because here we had a disease that could affect people very, very badly, but at the same time, it wasn't quite understood how it was transmitted. Ebola, on the other hand, is clearly a virus. We know what it is. It goes immediately from infection to death in a very, very short space of time, and during that period, the person is very infectious to anyone who comes in contact with them. So yes, the way that the diseases are transmitted they have similarities, but they also have great differences. The lifestyle choices that people were making in the 70s and 80s certainly contributed to the HIV. I don't think Ebola is in any way the same, because we can see people doing normal behaviours. We can see doctors, nurses dying because they haven't taken extreme methods to prevent contact with the individual who's infected. And when we extreme, we're talking about covering up every inch of their bodies.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I bring back Prime Minister Dean for 1 minute.
Now, I just want to mention, too, about covering up every inch of your body. Well, with AIDS, you only had to cover up about 6 inches to actually do prevention, or 5 or 3 or whatever, depending on where and when and who you were. But that was a specific method of transmission, which was understood. So in that sense, there is a similarity, I would argue. Although AIDS took a long time to incubate, the fact that people didn't know what those symptoms were for the longest time could mean that people were having sex with other people, heterosexual, homosexual couples who had had extramarital affairs or extra relationship affairs. That was the transmission as well. The other issue is that healthcare workers have a difficult time in countries that don't have good healthcare systems. Never mind. That's the problem, is that there are no healthcare systems to address the issues. You might know in the States that you've got to cover everything up. If you're in West Africa, if you're in some part of Asia, you don't know that. You just act normally and get sick.
Thanks, Dean. Okay. So, people for the motion, please raise your hand. 11, okay. It's 11. Okay. People against the motion, please raise your hand. 7. Okay. 11 against 7. Ebola is the new AIDS. So, thanks, Dean. Thanks, Rob. Thanks.